Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, lovely to see you. We've been thinking the last 2 or 3 days about remembering things, a remembrance, because of the season of the year. We had All Souls or All Saints Day, the 1st of November, and then of course Armistice Sunday or Remembrance Sunday, this last Sunday gone, and tomorrow of course is the 11th of the 11th, and at 11 o'clock there will be those who will remember tomorrow. Now it's interesting that as I was thinking and saying to the Lord, what shall I talk about this morning? A phrase came to my mind out of a book that Terry and I are using in our devotions. It's called The Birds Are Teachers. It's fully illustrated with John Stott, great Anglican minister, John Stott's photographs of birds, because he was a bird watcher all his life, and each chapter looks at a different species of bird or type of bird and brings a lesson out of their behaviour and based on the scriptures. And yesterday's thought was about owls. Owls. There are 140 owl species in the world, and owls can rotate their heads at least 180 degrees, and some even as much as 270 degrees. They can turn their head, they can look completely behind themselves. We can't do anything like that, but they can turn their heads right the way round to look in the opposite direction. And he was saying that we have to have a balance in our remembering, that we have to remember the past, but look to the future. And we need to do both equally. And that's a very interesting thought, that we need to be like the owl, and we need to look back to remind ourselves where we've come from, what we were, or what God has done for us, but to look forward to the second coming of Jesus. And he quotes, let me read a little bit from his book. He says, The Lord's Supper or Holy Communion constantly reminds us of these things. As Paul wrote, whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. That's 1 Corinthians 11:26. It is truly remarkable that within the compass of a single verse, Paul should refer both to the Lord's death, which is past, and to the Lord's coming, which is future, and should indicate that the Lord's Supper is a bridge between them. For when he comes in person, the reality has arrived, and the signs and symbols will no longer be needed. So, in that verse, Paul says, whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, which you do in remembrance of Jesus dying, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. So the two things are there, held in that one verse. And as someone said, and it always stuck in my mind, here we are celebrating communion again, one more time, in one sense, one more time in our life as we live it, but one less time in the length of time in which we will be needing a reminder of what Jesus did for us. Because when we see him, we won't need the reminder. When we're in glory, we won't be taking communion again. It is to help us through this life. So we need to keep our minds set on the expectation, the absolute certainty. He says, we must learn to imitate the owls, which swivel their heads right round, for then we can perform our essential spiritual contortion, looking back to Christ's death and resurrection with enormous gratitude, and looking on to his return with eager expectation. That's how we should live our lives, looking back with gratitude and looking forward with eager expectation. So that's the thought for the day, is consider the owls. Think about the owls and how amazing they are, how wise they are. They're known as the birds of wisdom. You know, if you want, it's a proverb, isn't it, to be as wise as an owl. And if we want a symbol of wisdom, we have an owl with a pair of spectacles on. Sometimes wearing spectacles was always thought of as being very clever. Now so many of us wear it, I think it doesn't really apply. But we used to think about owls, didn't we? You think of all the storybooks, children's storybooks have an owl with glasses on, usually on the tip of their nose, looking over their nose very wisely at the other creatures of the wood or whatever who are asking the owl's advice. Consider the owl and look both ways. Look back with gratitude to see where you've come from, what God has rescued you from, how he's helped you, how many times he's intervened in your life and pointed you in the right direction, how many times he's been there, and think about all the times when he's helped us and we hadn't even realized that he's helped us. And then turn your head round and look forward with eager expectation to the coming of Jesus. He is coming. He will come. He will come. He's simply awaiting that word from the Father to come and rescue us, finally rescue us from this world in which we live. We don't need to look too fixedly on today and the immediate future. Let us look on the wonderful far future, or maybe not so far future, if he comes sooner than perhaps some people think he will. We don't know when he'll come, but we do know he will come. Just as surely as he did come, he will come. And we look for him with eager expectation. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.